1 week ago, Japan did something it hasn't done since 1945, since Hiroshima. Since the moment an entire nation decided it would never again be a country that exports war. Japan lifted its ban on lethal weapons exports. Prime Minister Sanae Takaichi announced that Japan would now sell fighter jets, missiles, warships, and combat drones to 17 partner nations. A country that spent 80 years defining itself by pacifism just opened its arms industry to the world. And one of the very first things that happened after that ban was lifted, a Japanese company announced it's scaling up production of Ukrainian interceptor drones designed to hunt and kill Russian Shaheds. The company is called Terra Drone. It's a Tokyo Stock Exchange listed aerospace giant, and on April 28th, today, its CEO, Toru Tokushige, announced a second major investment in Ukrainian defense tech, a partnership with Winilab to produce the Terra A2, a fixed-wing interceptor drone that can fly for 40 minutes, cover 75 kilometers, hit speeds of 312 kilometers per hour, and patrol airspace autonomously before slamming into incoming Russian drones at supersonic closing speeds. This isn't humanitarian aid, this isn't financial support, this is Japan building weapons with Ukraine, for Ukraine, to kill Russian military assets. And the CEO's reasoning was chillingly direct. Today the Shaheds are attacking Kyiv, tomorrow they will fly to Tokyo. Japan isn't just supporting Ukraine anymore, Japan is arming itself by arming Ukraine. And Vladimir Putin just lost the one technological edge Russia still had in this war, the ability to terrorize Ukrainian cities from the sky with impunity. Let's break down what these drones are and why they matter. Russia's primary tool of terror against Ukrainian civilians is the Shahed drone, an Iranian-designed, Russian-manufactured one-way attack drone that costs roughly $20,000 to $50,000 per unit. Russia launches them in swarms of hundreds, sometimes over 600 in a single night, targeting power plants, apartment buildings, hospitals, and infrastructure. Ukraine's air defenses, Patriots, NASAMS, Gepards, mobile fire groups, intercept the vast majority. But each Patriot missile costs $4 million. Each Iris-T costs $430,000. Using $1 million missile to shoot down a $30,000 drone is like hiring a private jet to deliver a pizza. The math doesn't work long term. And Russia knows this. Its entire strategy is to exhaust Ukraine's expensive air defense inventory with cheap expendable drones, creating gaps that cruise missiles and ballistics can exploit. Ukrainian interceptor drones have already proven they can close this gap. According to Ukrainian military sources, interceptor drones have shot down approximately 1/3 of all Shaheds destroyed in recent months, at a fraction of the cost of traditional air defense missiles. The problem isn't effectiveness, it's production scale. Ukraine needs thousands of these drones per month to maintain layered coverage across a 1,200-kilometer front line and protect its major cities simultaneously. That's where Japan comes in. Enter the interceptor drone. The Terra A1 is a rocket-type interceptor, a vertical launch drone that accelerates to 280 kilometers per hour, covers up to 32 kilometers, and physically slams into incoming Shaheds. It costs between $2,000 and $3,000 per unit. That's 100 times cheaper than a Patriot missile. And it works. Terra Drone confirmed that a Terra A1 has already successfully intercepted a Shahed in live combat. Not in a test, not in a simulation, on the battlefield. In the military field, what matters most is not certifications but combat-proven effectiveness, the company stated. Without this, it is impossible to sell. The Terra A2 is the bigger, meaner sibling. It's a fixed-wing interceptor, launched from a catapult, that can stay airborne for 40 minutes, patrol an area autonomously, and intercept targets at ranges up to 75 kilometers at speeds of 312 kilometers per hour. While the A1 is designed for base protection and rapid terminal defense, the A2 provides wide area surveillance and early threat detection. Think of it as the difference between a guard dog and a patrol helicopter. The A1 bites when something gets close, the A2 sees it coming from miles away. Together, they create what Terra Drone calls a layered defense system, short-range, mid-range, and eventually long-range interception, using a combination of drone types. CEO Tokushige explained, "It is impossible to defend using just one type of system. You need multiple layers, short, medium, and long range, with different speeds." And they're not stopping at the A2. Terra Drone is already developing jet-powered interceptor drones, prototypes expected to reach 440 kilometers per hour, with operational ranges of 140 kilometers. At that speed, even the fastest Russian cruise missiles would be within engagement range. The arms race between Russian attack drones and Ukrainian interceptor drones is accelerating, and Japan just strapped a rocket to Ukraine's side. Terra Drone isn't some scrappy startup. It's one of the world's largest drone technology companies, listed on the Tokyo Stock Exchange, with over 3,000 completed projects worldwide, across agriculture, energy, construction, and infrastructure. This is a company with decade-long experience in supply chain management, mass production, and global market expansion. And that's exactly what Ukraine needs. According to Tokushige, Ukraine's drone developers have incredible speed and combat-proven designs, but they lack experience in mass production and operating in global markets. Many processes are still performed manually. Scaling is difficult. Terra Drone's role is to solve that problem, to take Ukrainian combat innovation and apply Japanese manufacturing discipline to turn it into a global product. The partnership started when Tokushige personally visited Ukraine in September 2025, ignoring Tokyo's official travel advisory, and met with over 100 Ukrainian defense tech companies. He used his own connections and LinkedIn. The Kyiv Independent reported that he initially struggled to convince Japanese investors of the interceptor drone market's potential. Then the Iran war happened. Suddenly, every country in the Middle East wanted drone defense systems. The market Terra Drone had been pitching went from theoretical to urgent overnight. The first investment was in Kharkiv-based Amazing Drones, the manufacturer of the Terra A1. The deal, announced March 31, 2026, made Terra Drone the first Japanese company to invest in Ukraine's defense sector. The second investment, announced today, is in Winilab, the developer of the fixed-wing Terra A2. Both companies operate in active war zones. Their engineers receive real-time feedback from military units in the field. Their drones are being refined based on actual combat performance, not PowerPoint presentations. Tokushige sees a global market worth hundreds of millions of dollars in the defense segment alone. Terra Drone is already participating in Japanese military tenders and plans to bring Ukrainian-designed drones to international buyers. The goal is to combine Ukrainian combat experience with Japanese manufacturing precision to create the world's leading interceptor drone brand. It's the military equivalent of a sushi fusion restaurant. Except instead of combining cuisines, they're combining supply chains, and the result explodes on contact at 300 kilometers per hour. Which, now that I think about it, is a terrible restaurant concept, but an excellent business model for drone warfare. The Terra Drone story is dramatic, but it's just one piece of Japan's rapidly expanding commitment to Ukraine. Let's zoom out. Japan has provided over $12 billion in total aid to Ukraine since the full-scale invasion, making it the largest non-Western donor by a significant margin. That figure includes $10 billion in humanitarian and financial aid confirmed as of early 2024, plus a further $12 billion in financial assistance pledged in February 2024, of which $4.7 billion was delivered by the end of that month. In February 2024, Japan and Ukraine signed a bilateral tax treaty eliminating double taxation for Japanese investors in Ukraine, opening the door for companies like Toyota and Honda to establish factories there. Japan eased visa controls for investors and created a $1.35 billion program to support Japanese businesses operating in Ukraine. These aren't charity projects. They're investments in Ukraine's post-war economy that also serve as a direct challenge to Russia's attempt to make Ukraine uninvestable. Japan has been at the forefront of international sanctions against Russia. It was one of the first G7 nations to implement asset freezes, swift payment restrictions, and export bans. It revoked Russia's most favored nation status in April 2022. It joined the G7 price cap on Russian oil. It has implemented rolling sanctions on Russian banks, luxury goods, and individuals, with new rounds added as recently as June 2024. Japan's former Prime Minister Fumio Kishida visited Kyiv in March 2023, the first time a Japanese leader visited an active conflict zone since World War II. He used Japan's presidency of the G7 in 2023 to keep global attention focused on Ukraine. He invited Zelensky to the G7 summit and facilitated introductions with leaders from India, the African Union, and Southeast Asian nations, countries Russia had been courting. And then there's the Patriot pipeline. Japan manufactures PAC-3 MSE interceptor missiles under license from Raytheon and Lockheed Martin. In 2024, Japan agreed to sell $19 million worth of these missiles to the United States, ostensibly to replenish American stocks depleted by shipments to Ukraine. There are no conditions on how the US uses these missiles once they arrive. The pipeline is transparent to everyone involved. Japan builds Patriot missiles, sends them to the US, and the US sends its existing stock to Ukraine. Japan can't legally send weapons directly to a country at war, but it can make sure the country supplying the weapons never runs out. Russia's foreign ministry warned that the appearance of Japanese missiles in Ukraine would lead to consequences. Given the current state of Russia-Japan relations, which include an unresolved World War II territorial dispute over the northern territories, Russian military installations 10 miles from Japanese territory, and Putin's mutual defense pact with North Korea, Japan doesn't appear to be losing sleep over Russian threats. The Northern Territories dispute is worth understanding. After World War II, the Soviet Union seized a chain of islands just northeast of Japan's northernmost island of Hokkaido. Japan has contested the seizure ever since. Peace treaty negotiations between the two countries have been suspended since March 2022. Russia has been steadily militarizing these islands, building barracks for 7,000 troops, installing Bal and Bastion anti-ship missiles with ranges of up to 310 miles, and expanding airfields. Putin has publicly stated he intends to visit the disputed islands, essentially daring Japan to respond. In June 2024, he signed a mutual defense pact with North Korea, Japan's most immediate security threat, signaling that any pretense of maintaining cordial relations with Tokyo was over. Former Prime Minister Shinzo Abe spent years trying to build a relationship with Putin, even referring to him as Dear Vladimir. When Abe was assassinated in 2022, Putin lost his biggest Japanese ally. The generation of pro-Russian politicians in Japan has aged out or been sidelined. What replaced them is a new political class that views Russia, China, and North Korea as an interconnected threat axis, and Ukraine as the front line of a fight that could reach the Indo-Pacific next. On April 21, 2026, Prime Minister Takaichi's cabinet approved the most significant revision to Japan's arms export policy since 1945. The ban on lethal weapons exports, a cornerstone of Japan's post-war pacifist identity, was scrapped. Japan can now sell fighter jets, missiles, destroyers, combat drones, and other lethal equipment to 17 countries with which it has defense agreements. The immediate implications are massive. Japan's Mitsubishi Heavy Industries has already signed a $7.15 billion deal to build warships for Australia. The Philippines and Indonesia have expressed interest in Japanese naval vessels, and Japan is co-developing a next-generation fighter jet with the UK and Italy. For Ukraine, the policy change has indirect but powerful implications. Japan still cannot export weapons directly to countries at war. That restriction remains. But the definition of what Japan can supply to allied nations has expanded enormously. PAC-3 missiles, Type 12 anti-ship missiles, naval radars, and eventually components of the joint UK-Italy-Japan fighter program could all flow through partner nations in ways that ultimately strengthen Ukraine's position. Defense Express noted that Japan is now the only country outside the United States engaged in licensed production of PAC-3 MSE interceptors, the specific missile variant that shoots down Iskander ballistic missiles and Kinzhal hypersonics. With global demand for air defense surging because of both the Ukraine and Iran wars, Japan's production capacity could help close the gap that has left multiple countries waiting years for Patriot deliveries. Japan's defense budget for 2026 is its largest in history, 9.04 trillion yen, roughly $60 billion. Defense is now one of 17 strategic growth sectors under Takaichi's government. Major corporations and startups alike are flooding into the sector. Mitsubishi Heavy Industries is accelerating mass production of long-range missiles, and 30 NATO representatives recently visited Japan to discuss deepening ties, a visit that would have been unthinkable 5 years ago. The country that renounced war is now one of the world's fastest-growing arms exporters, and every missile it builds, every warship it launches, and every interceptor drone it invests in makes Russia's strategic position a little bit worse. Let me bring this full circle. A Japanese CEO ignored his own government's travel advisory, flew to a war zone, met 100 Ukrainian drone companies on LinkedIn, invested in a startup operating out of Kharkiv, and is now building interceptor drones that cost $3,000 each and can destroy $30,000 Russian Shaheds in mid-flight. Meanwhile, Japan lifted its 80-year weapons export ban, signed a $7 billion warship deal with Australia, started shipping Patriot missiles to replenish American stocks sent to Ukraine, and approved the largest defense budget in its history. Russia's entire aerial terror campaign against Ukraine depends on one thing: overwhelming the defense with cheap drones. If Ukraine can intercept those drones at a cost ratio of 10 to 1 in its favor, using Japanese-funded, Ukrainian-built, combat-proven interceptors, Russia's strategy collapses. You can't terrorize a country from the sky if every drone you send gets swatted down by something that costs less than a used Honda Civic. Putin bet that Japan would stay passive, that the pacifist constitution would keep Tokyo on the sidelines, that financial aid was the ceiling of Japanese involvement. He was wrong. And now, Japanese manufacturing precision is merging with Ukrainian combat innovation to build the drone defense system that could make Russia's Shahed campaign obsolete. So here's my question. If Japan, a country that literally constitutionally renounced war, is now building weapons with Ukraine and exporting arms to 17 countries, what does that tell you about how seriously the world is taking the Russian threat? And what happens when the Terra A2 goes global? When Saudi Arabia, the UAE, and every country in the Middle East that just lived through the Iran war can buy Japanese Ukrainian interceptor drones off the shelf? Drop your thoughts in the comments, subscribe if you're new. This channel covers the stories that are reshaping global security in real time. I'll see you in the next one.